The conversations and information provided are not intended to substitute professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment.
The opinions expressed are the speaker's own and do not reflect the view of Humana Military or the Department of Defense.
Welcome to the Operation Within podcast, where we talk about health and a deeper sense of well-being.
Operation Within is a collective initiative to optimize holistic health matters and nourish within community, within self, and within family.
Thank you for joining the conversation on Operation Within podcast. We are your hosts, Mel
and Marty, and our conversations are real, they're raw, and reflective.
These conversations offer meaningful dialogue on experiences within the military community, oriented to empower and strengthen health and vitality in our communities who serve.
We want to give a special thanks to Humana Military and our partners who have brought Operation Within to life.
Let's dive in. All right, so we are back. It's Mel.
And Marty, it's been a couple of weeks, Mel. How you been?
Good. Excited to be here with you and talk about family and military.
Oh my gosh. Wait, do we have enough time to talk about military and family?
Probably not, but we're going to do everything we can to get as many gems in this episode because there's so many pieces, I think, whether you look at parenthood and raising a child or children to marriage, but especially today talking about navigating just family life and different things that we've learned and experienced over the years. Yeah,
it's I tell you, talking about family, this is great. Anytime I get a chance to talk about my girls, it's a great day. And funny enough, or ironically enough, my youngest daughter, she's home from college, and she leaves in about 3 weeks. So we're trying to kind of wrap up and make the most out of our time together before she goes back to Virginia. But man, I remember, like I said, it's just all the way back to when they were born and all those challenges of being, overseas and traveling as a family and PCSing is those stories and those experiences they make you stronger, and I apologize to my girls often and say, guys, I'm sorry we moved 10 times. I'm sorry that you lived in all these different states and you went to 7 different schools. And, but funny enough, my daughters are like, it's okay. Like, this is great because now they've experienced, the world in a different way that my wife and I never had a chance to do. So it's good and it's challenging, but I think in the end, it just makes them stronger people and it just makes them more adaptable to their environment. So it's going to be great today.
Yeah, I see that so my daughter's starting kindergarten, which is crazy. You're talking about your daughter coming home from college. That'll be here sooner than we know. But just how much moving and changing happens within such a short time. And I find that kids are already pretty resilient. It's amazing. They're so much more grounded, I think, than us adults in so many ways. But she has been such a teacher in the process of adapting to change because it just keeping things light and yeah, and
you're right. I think the kids, they do a really good job. Well, they may do a good job of hiding it, but they do a great job of, I can't tell you how many times my girls have said, Dad, it's okay. Like, we're going to be fine. I'm like, my child is telling the adult that it's going to be okay when it's like, man, new house. And we've got the moving companies showing up. We've got to clean out the house, cleaning appliances, you're moving, right? And you have to do it in a short amount of time. You have to get to your new workstation. In some instances, or in most instances, the spouse or one of the two has to give up a job or a career to follow the military member. And it goes on and on and on. And that's just a day in the life of a military family. So I like that we're going to talk about this today, or that we're talking about this today. But I'll tell you that, I don't know if you know this, but my oldest daughter, she was born in Turkey. She was born overseas. And I'll tell you what, that was an experience in itself. My wife and I had been married just for a few years. And I ended up going to Korea for a year by myself. And then after my assignment to Korea, my follow-on assignment was to Turkey, Incirlik, Turkey. It's a Turkish military installation, but they have American forces in this installation. And my wife was approximately 7 months pregnant when I came home, picked her up. So she was kind of on that last window to fly all the way overseas. And, and we knew we were going to have a baby. Well, I was like, my wife's going to have a baby. I'm just along for the ride because I didn't know what was going on. We're both 22 years old, no family. And again, we come from a big, large Hispanic family where when you have a baby, they're all there. The grandmas are around. So we go overseas and my wife's pregnant. And a few months later, here comes little Isabel, born, December 13th. It was around the holidays. And man, let me tell you, just as a military member, one, I didn't have a clue what it was to be a parent because there's no manual that teaches you how to be a dad or a mom, right? You just kind of have to wing it. But as two 22-year-olds in a foreign country with a brand new baby, no family around, and you're just sitting around looking at each other like, man, what are we going to do? So, I mean, right there, instantly, you compound several challenges. And then, from there, like I said, we just kind of had to work our way, try to figure out what was going on, try to, be a good airman, do my job. She was adjusting to culture, away from family. And again, so that was our introduction into parenthood. And it was, and again, the story continues, but tell me about how did parenthood start for you?
Well, I will say, I can't even imagine being international. I mean, it's hard enough being in the States, and especially if you come from a large family, feeling that disconnect of even seeing potentially your siblings and other members of the family having that support of your parents or, the grandparents, and not having it in that way, especially being in such a different time zone. So your wife is a superwoman for sure. That's amazing. But yeah, it's interesting because we had moved to Fort Sam. So it was our first PCS to San Antonio, and definitely not planning to have a baby, but ended up finding out I was pregnant. I was actually in the process of preparing for a book tour and launching my first training program, and then found out I was pregnant. And it was actually, what was challenging, I think, is I didn't understand why I wasn't excited in the sense of, I knew I had these things going in my career, and it was only natural. I mean, at that point, people were already like, when are you guys going to have a baby? When is the family starting? So we kind of were already having those conversations, but it was a shock. But I struggled in the beginning for sure to, because I was trying to figure my life out, being new to San Antonio, coming from Fort Bragg, having a foundation of things. And it's like, okay, if I have a baby, what am I going to do in San Antonio? That's going to be so much time that, I'm not going to be able to build my career or to do these things that I was hoping to do. So I was really struggling with that perspective. And there was so many experiences throughout my pregnancy that I was telling Marty, what's ironic about that year is, so every year on my birthday, I always pick up a word to be an intention for that year. And that year was my 21st birthday. I picked the word power. And 2015 through 2016 was like the year of, okay, Melissa, do you really want to be empowered? Because it felt like everything was just blocking my potential. I got in some situations that ended up being a really challenging experience with my career because I was trying to figure everything out. And, this is a business advice, I think, to anybody, especially military spouses, starting businesses, is it's exciting, but make sure if you're collaborating with people that you sign those contracts before you start. Even if you love the person or you have good word, it's like sign those contracts, because at the time I kind of let things slip. And then before my eyes, my program was getting stolen from, the work I'd been putting in, and I got moved out of that because I was pregnant. So again, it's like, when I say quote unquote, because I was pregnant, that's what it was explained to the clientele. But the point is that it really leveled me up in the sense of, do you want to be in your power? So going back to struggling with this pregnancy, struggling with it's interesting, the birth of my book, the birth of my career, the birth of being a parent, having a child, that whole process really called me to start to reflect in different ways on how do I call my power back? Okay, so I'm pregnant, and what do I do now, right? Okay, well, if I want to have a birthing experience like this, then I need to make actions and choices to move forward into that experience. So in a nutshell, that's kind of where that story begins. That's
interesting. As you're sharing your story, I've never asked my spouse, like, if she felt like she left anything behind. We had the baby, and as a military member, I'm like, awesome, baby's born, back to work. Hey, do you need anything? Do you need diapers? Do you need anything in the house? Milk. But I never asked, like, hey, did you give up any goals, or did you lose anything? Because remember, she was living in Texas, and I picked her up. We moved over to Turkey, and we started our family overseas, not even considering, hey, are you okay? It's like, cool, man. Hey, 22 hours of labor, awesome job, great job. She ended up having not a natural birth, right? And so she had a cesarean, but she was in labor for a long time. And I remember being in the hospital thinking, man, I'm tired. I was literally like, she wanted to break my arm because I was thinking, military member, I'm tired. I need to get to work. Man, this is like interrupting my work. Like, man, can we just have the baby, go home and move on, right? But as you're sharing your story, I don't think I've ever asked Patty, ever. And we've been together since 1990, dating and married. And now, and as our girls are older, I don't think I've ever asked her if she ever felt any sort of depression, or if she was sad about, being pregnant or being away from home. And I just kind of assumed that she was just going to suck it up and just be there, be along for the ride. So I feel bad right now. I feel terrible as we're having this conversation. And again, but that's part of the growth is as we open up and we share these stories, is that we're always growing, right? And it would be naive of me to think that, I'm not going to grow from this conversation. So same as our listeners, if you're out there and you can probably reflect like, man, my kid was born overseas as well. Never thought twice. I just wanted to go party with the boys, as soon as the baby was born and smoke that cigar. Hey, mom, you're good? Yep, mom's good. Mom's back home. But anyway, so thanks for sharing that. But it's interesting that we have this dynamic where I can learn more about your story from the mom perspective. I can maybe kind of give you from the military perspective kind of what I was feeling. So a little challenging today, but I think this is good. This is a good conversation. So.
Well, I appreciate your vulnerability and for you expressing that, because I think that there is this, even the example of, okay, so here I am trying to rebuild my career after a PCS, and then, finding out like I'm pregnant, and my husband's like, woo, my family's like, let's do this. And I just didn't have that same energy, which can be really hard for the spouse. I know that was hard. And when I was talking about this empowerment aspect, and this is for spouses out there especially, or, not just spouse, military, any woman out there going through pregnancy in the military system, it was my first baby, so I couldn't, it would have been out of pocket if anything happened to use a birthing center. And so I was getting creative so much during my pregnancy of, okay, well, if I want a doula, and looking into doulas and having that piece. And one of the things that I struggled with providers is I didn't want to have different people every time. I wanted to build a relationship with one midwife and really have that support because, again, my family, they did the best they could, but they were far away. I didn't have mom to go to all the time. It was the phone. It was different. And I really wanted strong women to support me in this process in ways that I just didn't have as a military spouse, with my mom not being here or not having sisters, all that kind of stuff. So I was the crazy person that the front desk loves. And I was able to have a specific provider. She was consistent with ensuring that every time I came in for a checkup, that she was the provider I saw. And that was so amazing. And I share this because all it took was me to be vulnerable and ask and say, hey, what do I got to do to make sure you're my provider every time? And, even though at times the front desk is like, well, that's not how it works. It was like, all right, well then I'll just wait. And just being collaborative with them was so powerful. And what ended up happening, which is so crazy, because obviously, they work shift work. So when I went into labor, my midwife wasn't there, but because I was in labor for so long, she came in the next day shift, and she delivered my baby. And with and my husband's a nurse too, so it was kind of fun because he helped deliver as well. But it's just that motivation to ask, and then finding. Like having a doula there was so powerful because it really allowed me to shift the hospital room into the coziest space. I mean, the nurses would laugh, like while I was in labor, they were talking about how that hospital room was like a yoga studio because we had like diffusers going, the music. I mean, it was so beautiful.
That was really neat. So you were in North Carolina, correct?
No, this was at BAMC.
This was here in San Antonio. Yeah. Oh, right on. That's awesome. That's really good. So born in a military facility, right? In a military hospital. So my oldest daughter was born in a military installation. My youngest daughter, likewise, we were in North Carolina. We were, I think, at Womack is at the hospital in North Carolina. And same thing. It was okay. Here we go. Baby's on the way. And actually, during the second pregnancy, my wife had a lot of issues, a lot of I don't want to say complications, but she was very sick. Her body just did not adjust well to the pregnancy. So she was bedridden for the majority of her pregnancy. She couldn't eat. She was in and out of the hospital, for different appointments. And oh, by the way, this was on the heels of, we had a previous pregnancy, or she was pregnant, and the pregnant didn't go all the way to, we lost the baby, right? So she's on the heels of that, right? And we have another pregnancy. So I was like, man, this is high risk. And no, this year we're commemorating 20 years of the attacks on 9/11. So my youngest daughter was actually in the oven. She was in mom's belly while the attacks happened, right? So I see a lot of parallels, and the world changed that day, and she was born into a completely different world. But so when my daughter was born, it was just a couple of months after the attacks on 9/11. The entire, it's a military installation, right? So everything shut down, and security was nuts. And we knew, because we were in North Carolina and the unit that I was assigned to, we knew we were deploying. We knew we were going off to war. So I knew I was going to war. I knew my family was going to stay behind. I actually filled out my will that was the first time I ever filled out my will and wow. Said, hey, I'm going to give my stuff. I'm like, man, my youngest daughter, Izzy, she's almost 5 years old. And I'm like, man, I'm going to leave them behind and I'm going to war, but I got to go to war, right? Because that's what I got to do. I mean, completely just disassociate from the fact that, hey, my wife's about to have another kid and she's going through these difficulties. Nonetheless, the hospital there at Womack, they did a great job. They took care of her through her whole pregnancy. The morning of it was a planned delivery, right? Because it was another cesarean. So we knew when our daughter was going to be born. We had an appointment. We had breakfast. We showed up. It was great. But again, for me anyway, I was like, this is awesome, right?
I'm laughing because you're like, can we just like have the baby and go? What is this labor?
It was awesome. And even like I said, Patty, she was happy too, because she was like, hey, I already went through that round of 22 hours. I don't want to do that anymore. So we went in and she had her baby. Everything went well. We were released. And 2 weeks later, I deployed and I was gone. I was gone for 5 months. Have a great one. I hugged them. It's like, I hope I can see you. And again, never asking, hey, are you okay? Now, we were back in the States. So my mom and her mom actually flew to North Carolina and they were there to help her out a little bit. But again, just her body was completely upended, right, by this pregnancy. Her diet was out the window. She couldn't eat anything. And all I could think about is like, I'm going to war. I may not come back, right? I mean, you have to, you have those thoughts. Again, filling out that will and the power of attorneys. And again, military families, I think you understand those power of attorneys and moving and leaving. But I was so disconnected. I'm just like, I'm out. Have a good one. And again, I never, even to this day, I still don't fully comprehend what it's like to to leave the spouse behind, because I'm like, man, I got to go work. I got to do what I need to do. And when I come back, 30 days of leave, hang out with the boys. We're going to go out to the beach. You're good. You're good. And that's just some of those things, I guess, as a military member, I wasn't very aware of. Even now, I don't think I'm aware of fully some of the challenges that she went through, or even other moms or other dads that stay back. So I'm glad that I'm learning more from your experiences here.
Well, I think there's compassion too on both ends because, especially the scenario of, so September 11th happened and it was, you said 5 weeks later or 2 weeks later?
It was a few months later, my daughter was born. And then 2 weeks after she was born, I deployed.
I mean,
she was 2 weeks old.
It's just so much, right? And I think that this is where we can easily try to make sense of this is how we should be or this is how we should navigate. But when we recognize when we're holding so much that we do what we know how to do best, we do the best we can with what we know. And we don't know what we don't know. So when we are navigating, and even if you're listening to this and reflecting back, just really offering this compassion because especially in scenarios like that, it's so challenging. And, it's not the same, but kind of it's funny because, of course, I go into labor. The whole reason we're in San Antonio is because my husband, he switched MOS and he was getting his, LPN stuff here. And he had the NCLEX scheduled for August 3rd. And I went in labor on August 1st and had the, 26-hour labor. And so what happened was, though, if you can imagine, as the night was, as we were getting closer to the night, he's going, his NCLEX was on the August 2nd. Sorry, it was that morning. So I went into labor the day before his NCLEX. So while I'm in labor, he's like, should I leave? Should I go? Like, what do I do? Because, you don't miss that. So, he was going back and forth about, hey, should I leave? And I guess I heard the story later that my doula pulled him aside, was like, don't you dare leave. And
yeah, that's our escape, thinking, man, I can't handle this. I can't handle the stress of having the baby. And again, we're not physically having the baby. We're there. We're part of the process. And I think it is our way of coping with the whole situation, thinking, man, my whole life is about to change. I'm about to be a dad. I'm about to raise a child. I have no clue what I'm doing, especially if you're young. I know, again, when my oldest daughter was born, I was only 22 years old.
Yeah.
I had no clue. I'm still a kid. And I was like, man, I had goals. I had things I wanted to do. There was things I wanted to travel, and I wanted to, we wanted to go to different assignments. And boom, now you are raising a family. So some of those things are on hold. Not all of them, it's like, hey, but I want to go to school full time. Well, guess what? It's a little hard. It's challenging going to school full time with a toddler or a baby or even just serving in the military. And I tell you that I've served with just a phenomenal men and women, and their whole day, they're like, got to drop off the kids. Then I got to go to lunch. I got to do PT. I got to come back. I have a graduation to attend in the evening. I've got to find care for my daughter, for the pets. I got to, and there's so much going on. And again, we are the masters of the clock, right? We're like, okay, from between 6 a.m. and 10 a.m., I'm going to fit in about 50 things, and they're all going to be done perfectly because that's how our life works. But so I'm curious, right? So we're having this conversation, and and I've never. It's kind of taboo, right? It's kind of taboo. I don't think I've never felt any sort of depression after when my kids were born. But I knew, like, man, this is different. Like, okay, so my partying days are over, so I need to just kind of relax, and I need to be responsible. I need to be a dad. But I don't know. It's taboo, but I have friends, and I have I know folks in my orbit that have expressed things like, man, this isn't what I wanted. Not that they don't love their kids, but they felt. I mean, is there? I've heard the term postpartum depression.
Yeah.
How do we? What can you share about that? And how do we? I guess reconcile those feelings without feeling guilty or feeling like we don't love our kids? Like what can you share on that?
Well, it's a really complex topic. And one thing, just before I dive into into that topic, one thing to honor about service members and, partners that are service members is that there is this servitude, right? This effort, like this passion to serve. And, kind of laughing with my husband, questioning, like, do I leave to go take the NCLEX because that's my job, that's what I'm supposed to do? Or, as a service member, you got to go to work, you got to go do these things, if you have to deploy or go TDY, you got to, right? And so being able to have this compassion in that process and understand, and then talking about postpartum depression, and I gotta say, I think that it's becoming less taboo. Even, talking about the, finding out you're pregnant and, not having all the joy and just trying to fit the pieces. And then eventually the joy comes, sure. And everybody has their own experiences. So if you're listening to this, everybody has their own experiences and they're all unique to themselves. And I think it's the same with postpartum depression. I'm not specialized in this work. I'm not a clinical provider or a licensed provider in this. However, I can just share from my own experience of navigating that. And I think that part of the reason I struggled so much, it really was more so that first month after I had my daughter. And I think that there was some things that kind of bled into the following few months. But part of it was navigating, the huge shift that happened with my career, the unexpected things that unfolded, and the stress for sure, because I had mastitis, I had all types of really painful infections. I'm trying to remember. I remember going to see a provider regarding my postpartum depression, and the provider was, very kind, very sweet, but just like, well, this is how it works. You have to go see this person, and then come back. It was a very big process just to get the proper care that my husband and I were looking for me, and it felt very overwhelming, which caused me to disengage. I eventually did find a mental health professional. It took a little bit of time because you got to find the people or a provider that resonates with you. And it did. It took me a little bit of time to find that provider. But when I reflect back, it was one of those things that it didn't have anything to do with not loving. Or, again, there's women who navigate this. Part of this is there's a lot of hormones that happen, right? And a lot of somatic changes. So there's that one piece. Also, lack of sleep, lack of your own nutrients, the lifestyle change. I think there's a ton of factors. I love what they call it is fourth trimester. They call it fourth trimester. And, we'll say this is postpartum depression, but I think part of it too is, in our nature, we were once surrounded by so much community after having a baby. And as we have become more private and with individualized family houses, and then you add the military where you don't have your family nearby, it really, the separation, I think we're not meant to carry those things alone. So I want to share something that really helped me. And I'm a huge, if you know me personally, I'm a huge advocate for doulas, because they not only look at, how to support you during labor, but also the after. I remember being told I didn't produce enough milk, so I probably couldn't breastfeed. But my doula was like, are you crazy? This is normal. Like, you can breastfeed. And she helped me so much for the baby to latch and to move into those things, which was, having that support, I couldn't put a price tag on it. I couldn't express. This woman, and she was by my side for all of those 26 hours of labor, keeping me hydrated, cheering me on all the way to a few weeks after to be that space. And what I ended up doing was one of the things I picked with my doula is I wanted a military spouse. So when I searched for a doula, I Googled military spouse doulas. And that's how I found the company I use. They were amazing. I don't know if they're still in service, but I want to give a shout out. Their Journey to Motherhood. And it was military spouse run, and they were amazing. And then they had a program called Sacred Beginnings afterwards. So I got myself connected to community, because especially after navigating being new to San Antonio, it experience of my career at the time, and having to really reclaim myself in that way, I needed community.
And I think that's key with a lot of our partner organizations that are sharing this experience with us, right? This Operation Within, the podcast, the different organizations we're working with, is you find that community, not just, again, a few weeks ago we were talking about, or we're going to talk about the food bank, right? And serving and going out there and working with the food bank. Well, what you don't realize is while you're out at these engagements, you get to meet people who may have a shared experience, or say, hey, I'm going through this. Oh man, my wife or my sister, or I'm going through the same thing, and that's how you find that community. So I think this is really good that again, you found somebody that's affiliated with the military, again, because it comes down to language and culture. And I know not the English, Spanish, not that language, but the military has its own language, its own subculture within the culture of the United States. And there's certain things that we do, and there's certain things that we expect, right? And like you said, your word was power, right? And you wanted to reclaim that power. And again, and feeling comfortable and knowing that you need to do what you need to do. But I think, so fourth trimester, that's interesting. And I'm thinking how much me as a dad, I'm reflecting how much I contributed to the struggles of that fourth trimester. Like, hey, I'm going to go party. Hey, I'm going to go work. Or, hey, I'm deploying. Have a good one. And I'll call you in 4 months, or I'll call you in 3 months, and hopefully everything goes well. But again, not being aware or cognizant of that, because again, just really compartmentalize. Like, I got to go to work, man. Somebody's got to pay the bills, and you got the house. Yep, you got the house. So I think that's just by nature of the job, and we want to be, we want to do the best we can, and we want to succeed and promote, and thinking, hey, I'm promoting, look at me, I'm deploying, look at me. This is great for the family. And while the other half is like, man, I'm really having some challenges here. I'm having some struggles. Do you think same-sex couples or partners, do they go through the same thing?
I don't know, because I don't have that experience, but I can imagine that there's different, just in partnership, right? After a baby comes in to a family, the dynamic of the marriage changes, or that relationship changes. And, again, like terms like fourth trimester and a lot of these things, even the concept of a doula, 20 years ago, we were very mechanical about a lot of things, and we're shifting as a society to be more open into integrative aspects of care. So that's one thing to note. But, in a relationship, I find that, I think that because, like, I remember my husband saying, sometimes it was hard because it seemed like, my daughter, like, she needed me, right? Because I fed her, and like I did all these different things because she breastfed, she refused bottles, and he felt powerless in a lot of ways. And I think that as partners, when you feel you feel helpless, and that can create divide in relationship, communication issues. Of course, there's, okay, you're going to work and I'm sitting here. I spent a lot of time during that time on Netflix because I wanted to disassociate in a way. And, part of getting involved in a community, and honestly, I started teaching baby and me yoga because I'm a yoga teacher. So I started teaching these classes to bring my daughter, and I was teaching, literally I'd be teaching yoga, holding my child, or these environments were so beautiful and so inclusive. And what the reality is that just by getting me to go out helped so much. And the reason, what I want to point out in yoga and in my scope of practice, part of depression at its essence is a problem with what we call prana, or energy. It's a problem with energy. It's depleted life force. And the ways that we work with depression in my scope of practice is exploring, well, where is life force clogged? Where is it blocked? And I reflect back to my own experience. It was when I started to move forward with, when we talk about power, again, the irony of that year for me was so much of, all right, you want to be empowered? You want power? Now you get to choose. You get to pick. Are you going to choose? Are you going to sit here and be a victim and boo-hooing because you made these mistakes and, whatever blame you want to make at this time? Or are you going to reconcile that, alchemize it, and lean into your power? Are you going to make choices and build relationships? You created this business, go and do it, right? Or, exploring those things within myself. So that's when prana, that energy, started to come back into me. And, I've always struggled with on and off with different mental health stuff, and yoga, y'all know, I've talked about this in past episodes, has been profound for my mental health. So by me getting back into teaching and serving, I brought my baby to get started.
That's right. And that's a great thing where you got the whole family involved in this practice. And that's really cool, because I think if there are some of our listeners out there, or folks that have experienced the same things, it's like, hey man, I'm just gonna make this happen, and we're gonna make it happen. We're just gonna bring the baby. We're gonna make this. We're gonna go for a walk. And in a lot of the things that we do with our Team Red, White, and Blue, and a lot of our events, you see families out there. You see folks pushing the stroller. You see folks with their fur babies out there doing that. Because again, they have found a way to say, look, I'm gonna get my 30-minute walk. I'm gonna get my my 10-mile run. There's folks out there pushing strollers for half marathons, or pulling strollers, and you're thinking, oh my gosh, like, when we first became parents, hey, we're going to go around the neighborhood or around the block for a short walk, but to think like, hey, I'm going to pull the stroller, or I'm going to run a full marathon, pushing the babies. Funny story, back when I was stationed in Hawaii, I got into running. I was a serious runner, and I ran my first marathon. And I remember I was like at mile 18, mile 20 of my first marathon, and I'm just dying. And I want to walk, and I want to quit. I'm so tired. And here comes this mom. She's pregnant. She's just cruising along. She passed me, right? And she just passed me, and I'm just thinking, oh my gosh, like, I got to finish this race, right? And mom was out there just getting after it. She was doing what she needed to do, and I'm thinking, wow, man, if she could do it, I can do it. She gave me all this. She gave me power, right, to say, hey, suck it up. Let's go. Like, if I can do it, you can do it. And I remember, so she finished way ahead of me, right? But I saw her at the finish line, and I'm thinking, you're awesome. You're awesome. Thank you for carrying me. But I just think it's really good when you take control of your own situation, right?
Yeah,
and you reclaim that energy. I like that depleted life force. I'm jotting down notes. I have I'm scribbling notes here as we're talking, because some of these things just really resonate with me. Depleted life force. I'm gonna use that, and I'm gonna save that for a future conversation. But I'm excited.
Well, and thank you. It's amazing too, because when you talk about with prenatal, or while through pregnancy, physical activity, it's so powerful and important. Of course, if there's health contraindications and things to be aware of, you want to take care of yourself. But, I was leading yoga teacher training pregnant, and, teaching yoga super pregnant, and it was so helpful. However, what's funny is, yes, yoga helps with lots of different things with labor. Physical activity is going to help with these different things, especially with your body going back, like the recovery, that 4th trimester. For sure, there's research out there of how important physical activity is. But, it's this, I love this concept of recognizing that we always have a choice. This theme of power, navigating a healthcare system, navigating things that are out of your control, such as, a deployment after a baby, or these scenarios. My husband was gone at the hospital a lot after my daughter, and he was working night shifts. So imagine, it was kind of nice because I was able to sleep throughout the day too, or navigate that. But at the same time, navigating things on your own, remembering that no matter what, even if it feels like things are taken from you, and that's the experience I had during that time frame after my daughter was born, of going, okay, I have a choice. Like, it feels like things were taken from me, or do I get to renegotiate my life? Do I get to trust that these things that moved out are creating space for better things to move in? And I tell people today that year was, as painful as it was initiation into this person that I wanted to be. And a funny story too is when I was in labor, my publisher called me, and he was like, your book's available on Amazon now. And this was the book, The Innate Design, I co-authored with Dr. Kyle Hodeback, who's an Army medicine physician. And, we were planning our book tour, like all this stuff. And obviously navigating those changes. But yeah, like my daughter was born the same day my book was born. So that's hilarious. And the nurses, they were laughing, and I'm like, this is ridiculous.
It's funny how the world, or how life just, it's all about timing, right?
Yeah.
Timing is everything. And sometimes we feel like, man, this is not what I was planning on. This is not what I had in mind. And then just life has a funny way of, it just comes back full circle to you, right? So that's really cool that you had the birth, like I said, of your child, and then the birth of your book, right? That's really cool that you're like, hey, this is happening, just not in the order that I wanted it to happen,
or in the way, you know. And what's interesting too about the book, because my second book, I got picked up by a publisher for my poetry anthology back in January 2020. So January 2020, I'm sitting here planning my book tour and all these amazing things with my book. And guess what? The pandemic hit. And I've really learned, especially, again, as I said, that year up with my daughter, giving birth to my daughter, it was like giving birth to a new version of myself, and really learning to renegotiate my perspective and creating reframes to understand how I believe that, and this comes from the book, The Alchemist. I don't know if you've read that by Paulo Coelho or Coelho.
I know of it. Yes, I know of the book. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a phenomenal book. And he, essentially talks about how the universe is always conspiring to work for you. And that, that's why when things are a no, it's because something better is coming. So it's like, not yet. Not yet.
I've had lots of no's, and I believe that because the world or the universe has given to my family so much. But I'm drawn to the word power, right? And you talk about one thing that I can say about military families, and from my experience and my own girls, right? Both my daughters. So my oldest daughter, she's out in Florida. After she graduated college, she decided not to come home. She says, "Dad, I know you're going to be upset, but I don't want to come back to Texas. I don't like Texas." I said, "It's okay, baby. You live wherever you want to live." And so she lives in Orlando, Florida. She loves Florida. My youngest daughter, again, she's in college. She goes to school in Virginia, and they're both out. And many times, as I mentioned earlier, I've apologized to them, say, "I'm sorry that I've had to uproot you and move you." But I think the power that we've gained through all of these different challenges, living in different cities and making new friends, going to new schools and getting new jobs. I mean, my job was waiting for me. I PCS'd in, or I moved to the new duty station, and I had somebody welcoming me, right? Like, "Hey, here you go. Here's your welcome basket." My spouse on the other end, it's like, man, I gotta start all over again. I gotta find a new job, and we talked about it earlier on in a previous conversation. But I think the power, our greatest power as military families or the military community, is our adaptability. Is no matter what is going on in our lives, right? No matter what happens, is we seem to find a way to bounce back. We seem to figure it out. And I don't know if that's just, in our DNA. I don't know if that's just something that's ingrained in us because of the military, right? It's like, hey, we're going to get it done. We're going to figure it out. We're going to think critically about the situation. Hey, you need to think about different options. But I think adaptability, if I had to credit my daughters with anything, and Patty, right, my spouse, man, they're so adaptable to the world. And that, like, now anything that happens, it's just like, okay, no big deal. Like, they're ready to bounce back. Where some of my family that is non-military, it's like the world is falling. It's like the sky is falling. It's like, oh my God, the world, I can't handle this. And we're like, oh yeah, man, we moved like 10 times, dude. We can tell you how to pack a house up. Don't worry about it. So I just think adaptability, I think that's our superpower as military families.
It really, the one thing with adaptability to recognize too is that it comes from within. It is a practice, a process, and a training that naturally, obviously, this lifestyle is going to curate within someone. But furthermore, when we start to recognize, and in part of this, we have to remove all the victimhood. We have to remove, because again, if you believe that you're not going to be accepted or you're going to be blocked, you're going to look around and find proof for whatever belief you have. If you start to recognize that power and adaptability is not about how much you carry and how awesome you carry everything, but it's how you can let go. It's in the way you let go, and it's how we measure. I always say, like, the way we measure our healing and we measure our adaptability is really how well and how often you can touch back with your own peace. because ultimately, you can resist, but when you allow change to change you and these things to change, to shift you, that's what adaptability is, but it comes from within and it's your choice. In the military, it's so easy to go, well, I don't have a choice. I don't have a choice. You don't have a choice if you don't think you have a choice. You can always, always collaborate. And I remember I was complaining once and I was like, I'm so tired of compromising. I'm so tired of compromising with the military, with my husband. I'm just tired of it. And the person I was talking to, she's an angel, and she said, well, maybe if you reframe the way you say that, instead of compromise, what if you say it doesn't have to be compromise. What if you just start collaborating? And that changed my world, because I don't compromise anything anymore. I collaborate with situations. I collaborate with scenarios. And I reflect back to my younger self, pregnant and navigating all those things, that a lot of those obstacles, I met it with that resistance at first. But then when I started to collaborate, I became, through that transformation of adaptability, I was liberated. So yeah, it's high five.
High five.
Yes.
We high-fived in the studio. That's fantastic. So let me tell you what, I told you earlier before we started our conversation that, anytime I talk about my girls, I get emotional. But I'll tell you a funny story, right? Because I want to bring some levity to our conversation, because there is no manual on how to be a parent. There's no manual on how to be a military member. You just got to figure it out. There's no manual for how to navigate the world, period, whether you're military or not, right? So for our audience listening out there, we have to grind it out again, make those connections. And we have to just keep moving forward, right? Keep moving compassionately moving forward. But I remember when my oldest daughter was born. I'm going to take you all the way back to 1997. We are in Turkey, right? Incirlik, Turkey. It is in Adana, Turkey, right? That's the name of the city. Military installation. We are living in this house. And we get to bring Isabel home, right? She's gorgeous. She's awesome. My baby. I'm a dad. Patty's a mom. This is fantastic. So we're sitting there on the floor and we're giving Isabel a bath in this little tub. And of course, so I'm in charge of just rinsing out the soap. And I know this, if she's listening, she's going to laugh at this. So anyway, I don't know what I'm doing, right? I'm just like, mom is like, hey, grab the water, do this, and she's going to be fine. So I pour the cup of water, she's like, just do it softly over her. She was born with a full head of hair. So pour it over her hair, right? And then to wash off the soap or the shampoo. Well, that soap gets all in her eyes, all in her mouth, right? Because I missed, like I pour the whole cup, right? So she's choking, right? She's coughing, and I'm losing my mind. I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm choking my own kid here. I have no idea what I'm doing. And my wife, she's laughing. She's like, it's nothing. It's just normal. But I remember it was just us two. We're sitting in the living room, and I'm thinking I'm drowning my kid, right? We're just giving her a bath just with, because she's just coughing, and she's just enjoying her time. And now, fast forward, she's 24 years old now, and she has a career in digital arts and visual effects, and she's doing great. She's out there in Florida, getting ready to buy a house here in the next 6 months, and I'm just so proud of all of those challenges and all of those struggles. Again, is you just add to that armor, right? That protects you and that carries you through life, right? And you add all those experiences and you build that adaptability, you build that flexibility of saying, hey, it's not going my way right now, but it's gonna get better. And again, compound that with a younger sister who is completely wired, type A, just like dad. She's ready to take on the world. And again, so it's to see both my girls out there just doing, just being good citizens and just taking on the world. I'm not saying that we did a good job as parents, but I'm thinking, man, I'm glad we didn't screw this up. I'm glad that from something as simple as pouring water, over my daughter's face. I'm glad that we did our due diligence and regardless of the missteps, regardless of the being unaware of some of the challenges and actually tonight I'm going to go ask Patty. Maybe we'll have a conversation. Hey, so share if she wants to, right? But maybe it makes me more cognizant of like, you know what, we did okay, and it's going to be okay. And that's really the kind of the genesis of what we're trying to share. These podcasts is it's going to be okay. We're going to be okay, right? Our community is going to be okay again. And it's just my girls are okay.
Yeah.
I didn't cry. See?
Yeah. I know. We're on the edge there. Well, and the one thing to remember too is we can never hold ourselves hostage for what we didn't know in the past. And even reflecting, whether you reflect on your parents and I reflect on my parents, and as being parents, it's like what's the most important thing is connection over perfection. It's love, and just feeling loved and seen is so important. And you can't be perfect. It's just not that way. And honestly, it would rob your children of learning the lessons they need so they can be the best versions of themselves. So that compassion is huge. And, Marty and I, it's funny because his girls are grown and mine is just starting kindergarten. So we're in very different spaces and with our life experiences. But if anything, you can take strength from this, listening to this, to know that, yeah, it's complex, it's emotional. And, I reflect back as hard as things had been early on. And, I think a lot of marriages go through, or relationships go through, these hard times after babies are born and navigating those changes. But, just so much gratitude for hanging in there. It's like just hanging in there. And if you're going through a hard time, this is just a season. It's a season. Let it change you, let it break you open, and let it heal you again, because that's the beauty of the seasons.
And I've said this a couple of times now, and this is how I used to end all of my classes when I was teaching for the Air Force, is that, remember, just keep it simple, right? Don't forget to eat. Don't forget to smile, right? And everything's going to be okay.
And drink more water.
Yes, water is good. But Mel, I'll tell you what, I've enjoyed our conversation. Again, I look forward to continuing our dialogue, and I look forward to just continuing our relationship, because I think we are years apart, but I think there's just a lot that we can kind of take from one another, and these are great. I'm learning so much, just sharing our experiences with the audience, and just getting feedback from our friends and family, thinking, wow, this is really good. I didn't know this about you, and this is just a great way to continue to learn and grow and heal right within. Right. And we're taking control. So this is awesome. I'm very, very happy to be here with you.
Likewise. And with all of you listening, we're all human. That's all we are. Yeah. Some put on, go to work on a military base, and, we have these different things, but at the end of the day, we're human, and human connection is most important. So, you don't have to be alone. Make sure that if you're listening, to subscribe and share, and download the Team RWB app to check out local events. And we have some more exciting things coming. Thank you for listening, and stay tuned for our next episode.
Take care, everyone.